So what's number 3? Okay. Well, number 3 is defensive patterns. Okay. So we've looked at number 1, okay, which was the survivors. Which I'll have a look in a moment to see what you've said, what you said, some of those things that I asked you to do, in terms of recognise where the victim identity came from. We've also looked at number 2, which is the adult child, and how the adult child happens when the emotions were trapped as a child and could not mature, which means never good enough becomes the method of communication, okay? And how you resolve it is by acknowledging who your child is. Okay, so if we have a look at some of the survivor kind of things, just bear with me a second. Okay, so yes, the feeling of being unsettled for no particular reason. Karen saying, Jane saying, I can recognise the 3 generations at least. Okay, excellent, because that's really, when you come into the survivor component, that's very helpful in terms of your psyche. Elaine saying, absolutely, Heidi, I did He Never Good Enough before, and this is resonating more strongly. So all the more reason, Elaine, to go back through it and do it again, because with your eyes open to these components of it. Okay. Brigitte, I think it's very difficult to let go of feeling never good enough, even with working on courses. It's just so deeply ingrained. Well, yes, it is deeply ingrained. It's very deeply ingrained. But remember, area number 1, when we looked at the survivors, okay, the victim identity. When that's caught and it's sticking, you cannot see beyond the victim identity. Okay, it is then about going through those components of the history to find where you were taught this stuff, okay, where you were taught it, who was, and it will be taught through some components around love, okay, and an indication of love. And that also very much comes in to this 3rd area, which is the defense patterns, okay. So what are the defense patterns? Okay, so hopefully this character on screen kind of gives you a feeling of, oh yeah, I'm not defensive. So the defensive patterns are along the lines of continuing to do the same behavior and anticipating different results. Okay, we're all guilty of that at some level, and we've all been guilty of that. I'm still doing the same, but I want different results, and then becoming defensive when that is questioned. Okay, the truth is, if you do the same, you get the same, but defensive patterns mean you expect different results. Okay, so the fact is, as I say, doing the same thing, doing the same behavior means that you do get the same outcome. So if you do the same behavior, if you apply the same behavior to continually to the one situation, you will get the same results. Okay, it might be different person, different meat, different gravy, same meat, different gravy rather. It's the same thing, but it comes back to this point where it's a defensive pattern. So the defensive pattern means that you expect the different results, and you get angry if what you're expecting doesn't change. Okay, so defensive patterns develop. Why do they develop? They develop to survive your environment. Okay, that's why they're there. They are there. So defense patterns develop to survive your environment. Okay, so absolutely they match with areas 1 and 2. So survivor and adult child. Not all of these components will resonate with you in terms of your full experience, as far as healing never good enough is concerned, but you're going to have at least one of these areas, okay, at least one of them, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this right now. You're going to have at least one of them. So defense patterns, okay, come up because you develop defense scenarios to survive your environment. So hence, feeling never good enough is a defense pattern. Okay, it's a way not to be noticed. So actually, when you don't feel good enough, it's actually a way not to be noticed. And you think, oh, that sounds a bit weird. But that's how it happens. It's a way not, if you're not good enough, you don't feel good enough, it's a way to kind of slink off. It's a way not to be noticed. And it's also a way not to feel punished. Okay? If you're not good enough, you can't get punished. And maybe, your foundation has been, well, you always felt punished. If I was noticed, I felt punished. So therefore, well, if I'm not good enough, I don't get punished. Okay? So healing it becomes therefore a double-edged sword. It's can't live with it, can't live without it. Okay, so can't live with feeling never good enough, can't live without feeling never good enough, because it's become a defense pattern as a ways and means not to get noticed or feel punished. Okay, so when we make ourselves start to change that, when we make ourselves behave in a way other than what we're accustomed to, okay, so when we start to try and change and we want to change something, when we make ourselves behave in a way other than what we're accustomed to, what are we doing? What are we actually doing? We're actually changing our identity, okay? So if you ever wondered why you sabotage and you say to yourself, oh, I can't do that, followed by, oh, I'm not good enough. You do it because it's changing your identity, okay? If you identify as a survivor and an adult child, your defense patterns are really strong. They're really strong because then you think, well, if I'm not good enough, they're not going to be noticed. And if I'm not good enough, then I'm not going to get punished. Okay, well, I'm just going to sabotage that, because sabotage being good enough, because if I'm good enough, it means I've changed my identity. And I can't do that because I'm not good enough to change it. So what then happens is you sabotage because it's about actually changing your identity. If your identity as that survivor or an adult child, as I say, your defense patterns are really strong. You'll resist. You'll not even allow yourself to finish things. You won't finish things. And why? Why? Because there are two types of love, okay? There are two types of love. This is to put this in very basic form. The two types of love, all-consuming and balanced, okay? So it's all-consuming and balanced. All-consuming, what does that mean? Well, it means it's passionate, it's obsessive, it's excitement, it's drama, it's mystery, it's yearning. And many people think that love is the all-consuming form. Okay, so passionate, obsessive, not love necessarily, it's wild excitement, or there's some drama, there's a bit of mystery, and I yearn. There's this yearning kind of thing going on. And the reason why is because it's based on an unconscious attraction to the on-off dynamic that may have been experienced for that adult child, okay? Especially if it was around, it grew up in an environment where there were things that were quite inconsistent, or there was always an element of unpredictability. It wasn't that there wasn't any, kind of strong routine, that kind of stuff. Okay, so then you'll identify love as this all-consuming thing. Okay, so it makes you eager to please. Absolutely, makes you all-consuming part, makes you eager to please, and you're sensitive to everyone else. Absolutely sensitive to everybody else and what they need and what they require, and how they want to make something exciting or dramatic or mystery or yearning. And you're wonderful, eager to make sure it's all fine for everybody else, okay? And sensitive to their needs. Their needs are not your own, okay? So that love where it's all consuming. Now the balanced version is very consistent, okay? It's very consistent, but it might seem, well, this is rigid. It doesn't really do anything. It feels a bit lifeless. Is this love? It seems boring. Absolutely, that's the way you'll see it if you're expecting it to be all-consuming. Okay? So which one out of the two, all-consuming or balanced, which one out of the two do you think affirms that you're not good enough? Which one of the two, all-consuming or balanced, underestimates your attractiveness and your abilities? Okay, which one does that? Well, hopefully you kind of figured that one out. All-consuming. All-consuming, if you expect love to be all-consuming and you become defensive around that, and you think, wow, I need something that feels passionate, obsessive, excitement, drama, mystery, yearning. Oh, wow, all this unpredictability, all this kind of, yeah, or I'm eager to please, sensitive to everyone else, feeling, yeah, this makes me feel alive. And that all-consuming component, well, the all-consuming isn't balanced, okay? Balanced is consistent. There has an element of consistency where it will seem rigid, lifeless and boring if you're expecting all-consuming. But all-consuming will make you feel not good enough. And it will feel all-consuming and exciting and passionate and powerful right at the outset of something. And then it will crash and burn. And you'll crash and burn with it. That's how you'll feel. So to change defense patterns, you have to change your idea of love. Okay? You can instantly, and I mean instantly, drop feeling never good enough if you give up your defense patterns. Absolutely. I promise you, straight up, it happens straight away. I did that a long time ago now, which is I decided to give up my defense patterns. Well and truly, I grew up in an environment where, all-consuming version was alive and kicking in our household. It certainly wasn't balanced in terms of this idea of love. You had to be all-consuming. You had to be absolutely aware of everybody else's needs but your own. No one was aware of yours. Okay? And that it was, and that's what I observed, is this all-consuming element of, what love was, this obsessive behavior between the adults in my life. Absolutely, that's what I thought love was. The day I decided to drop what all-consuming looked like was the day that never good enough pretty much evaporated. So you can instantly drop feeling never good enough if you give up your defense patterns by adjusting your idea of love. Okay, balanced is it's away from the fairy tale ending it brings. Okay, it brings things like normality and it brings stability, but it's away from that fairy tale ending, because fairy tale endings are based in all-consuming. They're not based in balance. Now the trouble is, do you want to? Do you want to change your idea of love? Well, keeping defense patterns means that your adult child thinks you cannot be well until the other person changes. Okay? You think, oh, well, all well and good. Well, if I change that, I change my identity. Whoa, hang on a second, I'm not comfortable with that. So surely, actually, if my child self thinks, well, if I then focus on the other person, on someone else, and focus until the other person changes, everything, I can't feel right until they change. Okay, till they change something. Especially if you're a hero child. Because you would have lived through that. You would have been the one to be responsible. So it'd be your idea, deep in your psyche, that it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody else is fine. So keeping a defense pattern means your adult child thinks you can't be well until the other person changes, or the other thing changes, or the thing changes that's aggravating you to the point where you don't feel good enough. Okay? If only their behavior was different. If only I could do what would make me good enough in their eyes. If only I could just change myself so that I'm good enough in their eyes. Well, what about in your eyes? Okay? Okay, do you want to change these things? So tip number 3 to healing never good enough in terms of the defense patterns is heal for yourself, okay? Heal for yourself and the golden rule, and for no one else, okay? If you're not prepared to heal for you, and this is where I'm really saying that I'm going to, ram it down your neck as far as this is concerned. So if you're not prepared to heal for yourself, then you will feel forever stuck. There has to come a point where you are prepared to heal for yourself and for no one else. And, you've come to this far in terms of being brave enough to get into this space of accepting that actually there's a lot of the time when you don't feel good enough, okay? And you want to solve it, you want to heal it. So do it for yourself, okay? And no one else. That's how you then dissolve the big saboteur, the defense, okay? The defense patterns. Have the guts to feel good enough. I'm going to tell you to do it right now, okay? So right now, if it's appropriate, obviously if you're driving or something, it's not. Close your eyes and just for a minute, let yourself feel good enough. Stop it. And let yourself feel good enough. Switch yourself from the survivor mentality into the thriver mentality. Just for a minute, just humour me for a second. Switch it. Switch off the victim identity, where you only identify with those things that have wronged you. Okay? And now feel around for the resistance, because there will be a whole bucket load of it. Okay? Feel around for the resistance, what it says. Where is it? Is it in the survivor? Is it in the adult child? Is it in the defense patterns? If you've suddenly gone into, I don't want to do this, distract myself, it's defense. Okay? If you've then got this part that goes, we can't, that's the adult child, it's the child. Which one is it? Is it the lost one that's saying, is it the mascot? Is the mascot making jokes of it? Is the hero going, well, there's no problem here, we have to save everybody? Or is it the scapegoat going, well, never going to be good enough, it's always my fault? Which one is talking? Let yourself, close your eyes and let yourself feel good enough. Because you're enough. But feel around for the resistance, what it's saying to you, what it talks about. Notice where it sits in the body and the voice it has. Okay, just let yourself do it for a second. And what changes when you allow yourself to feel good enough? Yes, sure, you've got these things in the way. Okay, sure. You've got the survivor thing, you've got the adult child thing, and you most likely got all three of them, and the defense thing. Okay? But so what? So did I. In bucket loads. With bells on. But I changed my identity. And this is what I'm saying to you. I don't talk this stuff just because I go, that's, why did I just tell them this? Of course I don't. I tell you these things because I've done them, changed it. And I'm telling you now, you can do it too. Just allow yourself to sit there for a second and feel that you are good enough. And all you're doing is then noticing, feeling around for the resistance, okay? And what it's talking about, what it's saying and what it's doing. And that's the bit that you're working with, okay? That's the bit that you're working not to silence, but to hear, to acknowledge, to allow it to find its own peace, okay? Because actually, to be good enough, you don't have to go and get something, you already are it. It's the noise that's in between. Okay, so If you're then thinking, oh, well, you know, I need to do more with the defense patterns. I can feel it. I can feel that strong. Well, I'm sorry, but there isn't time for it now. Okay, there's not time for it now. Okay. But again, it's all in module 3 of Healing Never Good Enough. Okay, so if you've already got Healing Never Good Enough, do it again. Okay, from this perspective, have a different perspective on it. Resolving the defense patterns by accepting the self is probably the hardest of the lot, because it's about finishing it. Okay, so if you've already got Healing Never Good Enough and you went, oh yeah, well, I didn't quite finish it. Well, because you've got defense patterns. That's why you didn't finish it. Go and finish it. It's easy. It's very easy to be never good enough. Okay? It's very easy to be that. Dead easy. Becoming good enough means leaving the competition that you didn't know you were in. Leaving the competition you didn't even know you were in, that you've been in your entire life and you didn't even know you were in that competition. Being good enough means leaving that competition, okay? And taking a chance on you. So the question is, and the question remains, is it time for you to heal feeling never good enough? Is it your time? Is it your time to do it? Is it your time to get on with it? So we've looked at, you are the survivors, okay, where you discovered that victim identity justifies not feeling good enough. But the key is to let that go by reviewing the past. We've looked at that, and we've also looked at the adult child, okay, and some of those things that you've said about the adult child in terms of who you are. Whether you think, oh yeah, I'm a scapegoat, I'm the hero, I'm the lost, and I can tell you now, you felt a bucket load of shame in acknowledging it. But why? Okay, the adult child. I communicate now with my adult child. Quite happy. Mine was a full-on hero child. Absolutely, it was the full-on hero. So, and we've also looked at defense patterns. Defense patterns develop to survive your environment. And you solve that by choosing to heal for yourself and for no one else. Okay? So, has this session helped? Type it into, those of you who can type into the chat box, type it in. Tell me what resonated the most, what you're hearing, because it's time now to move forward. You have to ask yourself, are you ready to give up underestimating yourself? Okay? And move from surviving to thriving. Because even if you've come from the most unsavory of circumstances, believe me, you can still thrive. And if you want to do that and you're ready to do that, then most definitely I have something for you, okay? Most definitely I have something for you in terms of Healing Never Good Enough, okay? Healing Never Good Enough, your key to self-esteem. What is it? It's 3 weeks. It's a deep dive course of 3 weeks, okay? So what we've touched on in this session is only the tip. I can only give you the tip of things in these kind of sessions. If you want to really focus on this and do it properly, then now's the time. That I don't think if you've got to this far with me, then you want to, quite frankly. So, and those of you who've already got Healing Never Good Enough, go back and do it again, finish it. Because I can tell you now, this will be the one, if you've done quite a few courses with me, this has been the one that you never quite finished, okay? Or you had to push yourself hard to do. Finish it. And I think you will agree, and I hope you will agree, that, what I've given you as far as this session is concerned has been helpful. That it's been a little bit of an eye-opener, okay? In part 1, we looked at healing the survivor's pattern, and you discovered the victim identity justifies not feeling good enough. So, the question is, are you ready to go deeper as far as that's concerned, to deal with that if the survivor resonates with you? As I discussed earlier, module 1 of Healing Never Good Enough deals with the pre-life influences, your ancestral emotional history, and the soul karma, which is all important because what's stored in the cells, as I found, becomes the extra deal as a survivor, becomes the extra thing that you have to deal with. So module 1 of Healing Never Good Enough is about healing the survivor pattern. Okay? And this part needs to be done first, because without it, you are absolutely hampered by the never good enough patterns of your family and your ancestors. Okay? In part 2 of this presentation, what do we look at? We looked at the adult child energy to discover it happens. The adult child happens when the emotions were trapped as a child and could not mature. Okay? Are you ready to go deeper on that? As I discussed earlier in module 2, if Healing Never Good Enough, you'll discover your inner child communication style, what the child talks to you about and how to regulate its behaviour through the nurture cycle that it still feels is missing. Okay? Once it becomes well adjusted, you no longer act out the adult child, whichever the role that you play, because the child feels safe and therefore good enough. Okay? So module 2 is about healing the adult child, because addressing the inner communication with the child who could not mature means your life becomes ruled then by your own choices. Okay? Healing that means your life then switches into your own choices. And then we looked at the big saboteur. We discovered your defense patterns and how they happen so that you can survive your environment. Okay? At different stages in your life. It doesn't have to be just in your early life, at different stages in your life. But the defense patterns build over a lifetime. Are you ready to go deeper in that in terms of dissolving that, so you don't have to bother with them, because they use up an awful lot of energy? I'll tell you that. They use up a lot of energy. As I discussed earlier in module 3 of Healing Never Good Enough, resolving the defense patterns by accepting the self is probably the hardest of the lot, because it's about finishing it. It's about finishing this whole cycle. It's easy to be never good enough. Becoming good enough means leaving the competition that you didn't even know you were in and taking a chance on you. Okay? So module 3 is about healing the defense patterns. And this part needs to be done last because it transforms the energy from never enough to enough. Okay? So